Maximilian Ray slammed his fist against the dashboard, the car's engine roaring as it sped down the rain-slicked streets. His heart raced with each passing second, his mind swirling with the consequences of his actions. His thoughts should have been on Isabella, but his mind was consumed by the weight of the decision he'd made, one that would change everything. As he turned into his secluded driveway, the mansion loomed in front of him, a towering testament to everything he'd built. It should have been a place of comfort, but now it felt like a gilded cage. The woman inside, the one who had been by his side for years, had made everything feel like a lie. He gripped the wheel tighter, a cold chill creeping up his spine. Maximilian stepped out of the car, his shoes slapping against the wet pavement as he marched toward the front door. Inside, he knew they were waiting. Charlotte, Tessa, and Mira, the three women whose reactions he had been studying. They had no idea what was coming. Maximilian's entire plan had been set into motion weeks ago. He'd spent years surrounded by sycophants, surrounded by people who only cared about his wealth. But what did love mean if it could be bought? He had to know. He had to test them. Would they stay, or would they leave when the money ran out? He stormed through the door, ignoring the polite greetings from Charlotte and Tessa. They didn't matter. He had one goal now, and it was the truth. He locked eyes with Mira, who was sitting calmly, as always, her posture perfect, her face unreadable. "What the hell's going on, Mira?" His voice was low, edged with fury. "What did you do?" Mira's eyes flickered momentarily, but she didn't flinch. "What are you talking about, Max?" He could barely keep his composure. "I know what you've done. You knew about the bankruptcy, didn't you? You knew about everything. You've been playing me this whole time." A slight smirk played at the corner of Mira's lips. "I don't know what you're talking about." Her voice was calm, but Max could sense the underlying tension. He could barely contain himself, his chest tightening with each word. "Don't lie to me. You've been manipulating me, manipulating my life, my relationships, everything. You've been in on this all along, haven't you? You and them." Mira's gaze never wavered. "I'm just here to help you, Max, to help you see the truth." "The truth?" he spat. "I've been trying to see the truth for years. That's why I did this. But now I see everything. How you've been controlling every damn thing. How have you made everything about you? How you've been pulling strings behind my back." "Max, calm down," Mira said, her voice unexpectedly gentle. "You're upset. I understand. This isn't easy. But what you've been doing, it's been a test, not just for them, but for you too." Maximilian's anger flared. "A test? You think this is a test? My life isn't some damn experiment, Mira. I wanted to know who cared about me, not my money. And now I find out that you've been controlling everything all along." There was a long pause. Then Mira's eyes softened, the coldness in them fading. "It wasn't just about the money, Max. It was about you, and about me. I've been with you through everything. I've been the one to pick up the pieces, to stay when everyone else left." Maximilian stared at her, realization dawning. All these years, Mira had been there, caring for him, caring for Isabella. But in the back of his mind, he had always trusted her, and now it felt like a betrayal. She had been so much more than just the nanny. "Why, Mira, why didn't you just tell me?" His voice was raw, vulnerable now. "Why didn't you just tell me you were in love with me?" Her lips parted, but before she could speak, Tessa stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "Max, you've been lying to us all. You told me you were bankrupt. You told me you had nothing, and now you expect me to stay around with no idea what's real and what's not?" "Then leave," Max shot back, his patience wearing thin. "If you're just here for the money, then leave. I don't need people like you in my life anymore." Tessa's face twisted with anger, but she said nothing. She turned to walk out of the room, but Charlotte stepped in front of her. "Wait," she said, her voice softer but still sharp. "You think this is some game, don't you, Max? You think we're all just puppets in your twisted little test?" Maximilian could feel his chest tightening with a mix of anger and frustration. He had pushed them all to their limits. "I wanted to know the truth," he said through gritted teeth, "but all I've learned is that no one here cares about me. Not really, not the way I wanted." Charlotte's eyes softened for a brief moment. "Max, I didn't want this to happen. I never asked for this game you've been playing. But if you want to know the truth, I don't need your money. I never did. But you're lost, Max. You're so lost in your own world that you can't see what's right in front of you. Maximilian's eyes flickered between her and Mira. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected them to see through him, to see past the facade he'd built. "Is that why you've been so cold?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because you never needed my wealth?" Charlotte nodded. "It's more than that, Max. I stayed with you because I thought you were someone I could trust. But all you've done is push me away. You've built walls so high no one can get in." Maximilian swallowed hard, guilt sinking in. His heart ached. He had wanted to know who loved him, but now he realized he had driven them all away with his tests, with his need for control. Mira stepped forward, her face unreadable. "This isn't the way to do things, Max. The truth wasn't meant to be uncovered like this. But now you see, don't you? It was never about the money. It was about you. And you've lost yourself in this." Maximilian felt the weight of her words crash down on him. It wasn't about the money. It had never been. It was about trust, about love, and in his quest to find the truth, he had lost it all. "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" he asked, his voice strained. "Why didn't you tell me you loved me?" Mira's eyes softened as she reached for his hand. "Because I thought you would never love me back." Maximilian felt his heart shatter as the truth settled in. He had pushed her away just like everyone else, and now the damage was done. Maximilian's breath came in shallow gasps, his mind racing as he tried to process everything Mira had said. He had always thought of her as a constant, his rock, but now, with the weight of her confession hanging in the air, it was clear that even she had been playing her own game. His mind struggled to reconcile the woman he thought he knew with the one who had just torn down every wall he had built. "You've been playing me, Mira," he whispered, the accusation barely audible. "You've been lying to me this entire time." Her eyes filled with a mixture of regret and something deeper, something darker. "It wasn't a lie, Max. It was a way of surviving. I've been with you through it all, but you've never seen me for who I am. You only ever saw what you wanted to see." Maximilian recoiled, her words hitting him harder than anything else. "I trusted you," he muttered, shaking his head. "All this time, I thought you were the one person I could trust, and you were just as manipulative as the others." "I wasn't trying to manipulate you, Max," Mira replied, her voice steady, but her eyes betraying the emotion she was struggling to keep in check. "I was trying to get you to see the truth about yourself, about what you really want, not the version of yourself you've been hiding behind." Maximilian was silent for a long moment, his heart heavy with the weight of the truth. He couldn't deny that there was some part of him that had always been blind to the people around him, focused too much on building an empire, on surrounding himself with people who were as emotionally distant as he had been. But Mira? She had been his rock. She had been the one person who seemed immune to the distractions of wealth. And now, he realized, she was the one who had been controlling him all along. As the silence stretched on, Charlotte stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "Max," she said, her tone surprisingly gentle, "this isn't just about Mira. You've been playing everyone in your life, your wealth, your status. It's been a barrier, not just between you and the women in your life, but between you and yourself." Maximilian's chest tightened, and he turned away. From her. "Don't you dare lecture me, Charlotte," he snapped, his frustration boiling over. "You've been just as much a part of this as anyone else. You thought I wouldn't see through your act, huh?" Charlotte flinched, but she didn't back down. "It wasn't an act, Max. I cared about you. I still do. But you've been living in this illusion, thinking that money could fix everything. You wanted to be loved, but you didn't know how to let anyone in. Not truly." Maximilian's jaw clenched. Her words stung more than he had expected. He had always known that he was guarded, that he had built his life around walls of wealth and power. But hearing it so plainly, hearing it from someone who had seen through his facade, felt like a punch to the gut. "I wanted to believe you were here for the right reasons," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "I wanted to believe that I was finally going to get it right." "You still can, Max," Charlotte said softly, her eyes holding a tenderness that Max wasn't sure he deserved. "But not by doing this, not by testing people, not by pushing them away." The silence in the room was deafening. The truth was hanging in the air, thick and suffocating. Max's entire world had been turned upside down in a matter of moments. Everything he thought he knew, about himself, about the people in his life, was unraveling before his eyes. He was about to speak when a soft voice interrupted him. "Dad?" Maximilian turned to see Isabella standing in the doorway, her small figure framed by the dim light from the hallway. She looked so much like her mother in that moment, innocent, full of hope, unaware of the storm raging around them. Maximilian's heart clenched at the sight of his daughter. She shouldn't have to witness any of this. He stepped toward her, kneeling to her level. "Hey, sweetheart, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice gentle despite the chaos in his mind. "I heard yelling," Isabella said, her voice quiet and uncertain. "Are you okay?" Maximilian's gaze softened as he placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'm fine, sweetie. Just a little confused, that's all." Isabella studied him for a moment, her young eyes seeming to see more than he expected. She then placed a hand on his cheek and whispered, "I don't want you to be sad, Daddy." Maximilian closed his eyes, his heart aching at the pure, untainted love in her words. She was the only thing in his life that hadn't been tainted by lies, by manipulation, by tests. She loved him simply because he was her father, and that was the only truth that mattered. He stood up, turning back to the others. "I need a minute," he said, his voice tight. As he walked toward the garden outside, the cool night air hit his face, grounding him. He needed to think, to make sense of everything. The weight of his decisions, the broken relationships, the shattered trust, it all threatened to crush him. But then, in the quiet of the night, Max realized something that cut through the fog of confusion. He had been so focused on finding love in the wrong places, testing people, using his wealth as a shield, that he had forgotten what mattered most: honesty, vulnerability, and the love of his daughter. Max took a deep breath, steadying himself. He couldn't undo what had been done, but he could choose to stop playing games. He could choose to rebuild his life, to open his heart for real. But first, he had to make things right. Are you hooked yet? Do you want to know what happens next in Max's journey of redemption? If you enjoyed this intense emotional roller coaster, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment down below. What would you do if you were in Max's shoes? Would you have been able to trust again? Let us know your thoughts. Maximilian stood in the garden for what felt like an eternity, the weight of the storm inside him far heavier than the drizzle falling around him. He tried to clear his mind, but all he could hear were Mira's words, Charlotte's accusations, and the sound of Tessa's frustration. It all kept echoing, replaying like a broken record. The cool air didn't help. The quiet didn't soothe him. He felt more lost than he ever had in his life. What had he been doing? Was this really the way to find love? To test the people around him? To drive everyone away just to see who would stay? He walked across the garden, the sharp grass under his feet grounding him with each step. The mansion behind him felt like a distant memory, something that no longer mattered. In that moment, all that mattered was the clarity he needed to move forward. And Isabella, his little girl, who deserved better than a father, lost in his own insecurities. He stopped by the fountain, the water trickling softly, and let out a long, steady breath. He had to change. He had to start being honest with himself and with the people around him. But the question lingered. Could he rebuild what had been broken? Suddenly, the sound of footsteps broke through his thoughts. He turned to see Mira walking toward him, her face as unreadable as ever, but there was something different in her eyes, a flicker of vulnerability. "Mira," he said, his voice low, "you shouldn't be here." "I know," she replied softly, "but I needed to see you. I need you to understand something." Maximilian shook his head. "I understand enough, Mira. You've been manipulating me, using me, for your own reasons. You didn't care about me. You just wanted control." Mira's expression didn't change, but he could see a faint tremor in her hands. She took a step closer. "I cared about you more than you'll ever know, but I couldn't just sit back and watch you destroy yourself with this obsession with testing everyone. It wasn't just about love. It was about seeing if anyone could get close to the real you, the you behind all the walls you built up." Maximilian looked at her, his heart still conflicted. "I've never known how to love, Mira. How could I? I've always kept everyone at arm's length. I thought wealth could protect me. I thought if I kept people around me, if I kept everything in my control, that I could finally have the one thing I've always wanted." "And what's that?" Mira asked, her voice softer now. "The truth," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I wanted to know who really cared about me. Not my money, not my house, but me." Mira's eyes softened, and for the first time, he saw the woman who had been there for him, the one who had cared for Isabella, the one who had quietly loved him in ways he hadn't noticed. "I've always cared about you, Max," she said quietly. "But I couldn't just wait for you to figure it out. I couldn't keep pretending I wasn't falling apart watching you push everyone away. So yes, I took control. I manipulated things because I thought if I showed you the truth about the women in your life, it would help you see what you were really doing." Maximilian was silent, his chest tight. The realization was settling in. Mira's manipulations were born out of a twisted sense of care, but they had cost him everything. His trust was gone, and yet some part of him still wanted to believe in her. He took a step back, his mind clouded with the weight of it all. "You don't get to decide what's best for me, Mira. I should have seen it earlier, but I was too caught up in my own damn head to see the truth. And now everything's ruined." Mira took a deep breath, her eyes flickering with something close to regret. I know I've done wrong, but I was just trying to get you to see how much you were pushing away. You want people to love you for who you are, but you've never let anyone see the real you. You've hidden behind this facade, this empire of wealth and power, thinking it would protect you." Maximilian shook his head, feeling the heaviness of her words sink in. I know that now. But it's too late. You've already ruined everything." Mira reached out, but he took a step back, avoiding her touch. His eyes burned with unshed tears, but he refused to let them fall. "I need time, Mira. I need to figure this out. I need to fix what I've broken." "I understand," she said, her voice low, filled with sadness. "But you can't fix everything on your own, not this time. You're going to have to let people in, Max. Let them help you. Let them love you, even with all your flaws. You can't keep pushing everyone away, or you'll end up alone." Maximilian looked at her, his heart torn. "I don't know if I can trust anyone again, Mira." She nodded, understanding the depth of his pain. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but you have to forgive yourself first. That's the only way you'll ever find peace." With those words, Mira turned and walked away, leaving Max standing alone in the garden. His heart was a storm, and the weight of the world seemed to press down on him. But as the minutes ticked by, something within him began to shift. Maybe there was a chance for redemption. Maybe, just maybe, he could still change. Maximilian took one last look at the mansion, the home that had been built on wealth and lies, and turned away, the path ahead uncertain, but for the first time in years, there was hope. If you're still hooked and want to see what happens next in Max's journey of redemption, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Like this video and comment below. What would you do if you found out someone you trusted had manipulated you all along? Let us know your thoughts, and stay tuned for more. Maximilian's footsteps echoed through the quiet halls of the mansion as he made his way inside. The weight of Mira's words lingered in his mind, each one a painful reminder of how far he had drifted from what really mattered. He walked past the familiar rooms, the ones that used to bring him comfort but now felt like empty spaces, haunted by memories of mistakes, manipulation, and regret. His gaze drifted to Isabella's bedroom, the soft glow of the nightlight casting shadows across the walls. She was the only thing in his life that had been untouched by all of this, the only one who loved him without expectation. He stepped into the room quietly, not wanting to disturb her sleep. She was curled up in bed, her small body cocooned in blankets. For a moment, he simply watched her, his heart aching at the thought of how much he had failed her. She deserved better than this chaos, better than a father who had been too blinded by his own insecurities to see what was truly important. Maximilian sat on the edge of her bed, his fingers brushing the hair from her face. "I'm sorry, Isabella," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry." She stirred slightly in her sleep but didn't wake. Max's heart twisted with the depth of his regret. He had built his entire life around power, control, and wealth, never once considering the damage it would cause. He had hurt the people he loved, and now he was left with nothing but the wreckage. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a door creaking open. He turned to see Charlotte standing in the doorway, her face soft but guarded. "You're still up?" Max asked, his voice hoarse. Charlotte stepped inside, her arms folded across her chest. "I couldn't sleep," she said quietly. "I was thinking." Maximilian didn't respond immediately, his eyes still fixed on Isabella. He wasn't sure what to say to her, not after everything that had happened. But Charlotte's presence was a reminder that despite everything, she was still here. She walked over and sat beside him, her gaze following his to Isabella's sleeping form. "You've been through a lot, Max," she said gently. "I know. You've made mistakes, but you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to shut everyone out." Maximilian turned to face her, his expression tired. "I don't even know where to begin," he confessed. "I've hurt so many people. I've hurt you, Mira, everyone." Charlotte shook her head. "You didn't do it on purpose, but you were so caught up in your own fears you didn't see the damage you were causing. It's not too late to change that, Max, but it starts with facing the truth, the real truth, not just the one you've been hiding from yourself." He let out a long breath, his chest heavy. "I don't know if I can fix it. I don't know if I can trust anyone again." "You have to trust yourself first," Charlotte said, her voice soft but firm. "You have to forgive yourself before you can start repairing what's broken." Maximilian stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. He had never been able to forgive himself for the mistakes he had made, for the walls he had built around his heart. But now, with Charlotte sitting beside him, offering him a glimpse of something real, something untainted by his need for control, he began to wonder if it was possible. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Not after everything I've done." Charlotte reached out, placing a hand on his. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Max. Everyone. But you have to be willing to take it." Maximilian's eyes filled with unshed tears, and for the first time in a long while, he let his guard down. He had spent so much of his life pushing people away, testing them, trying to see who would stay, who would leave. But what he hadn't realized was that true love wasn't about tests or manipulation. It was about trust, vulnerability, and accepting each other's flaws. He wiped his eyes, his voice shaking. "I don't know how to do this, Charlotte. I don't know how to let people in." "You don't have to have it all figured out," she said with a soft smile. "You just have to try." Maximilian nodded slowly, the realization slowly dawning on him. He had spent so much of his life afraid of being hurt, afraid of losing control, that he had forgotten what it meant to truly love and be loved in return. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to start over. He stood up, turning toward the window that overlooked the garden. "I have to make this right," he said quietly. "I need to fix this, not just for me, but for Isabella. She deserves a father who's there for her, who isn't afraid to be honest, to be real." Charlotte stood, her voice soft. "You can do it, Max, but it starts with taking the first step." Maximilian took a deep breath, his heart heavy but filled with a new sense of resolve. He had a long road ahead of him, and he knew the journey wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe he could rebuild what had been broken. Maybe with time he could learn to trust again. As he looked back at Isabella, peacefully sleeping in her bed, he whispered, "I will. I promise." Are you enjoying the journey of Max's redemption? What would you do if you were in his shoes? Make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below. Do you think Max can repair the relationships he's damaged, or is it too late? Let us know your thoughts, and don't forget to like this video for more emotional stories like this one. Stay tuned for the next part of Max's journey. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the living room where Maximilian sat, his hands clasped tightly together. He hadn't slept much, his mind still buzzing with the events of the previous night. The conversation with Charlotte had given him clarity, but it had also left him feeling exposed, vulnerable in a way he hadn't been in years. He stood up, walking over to the window and looking out at the vast estate that had been his world for so long. The mansion, the cars, the luxuries, they meant nothing now. What good was wealth when it had come at the cost of everything he cared about? He had thought that success, power, and control would give him happiness, but it had only left him empty. The truth was undeniable now. He had pushed away the people who mattered most, all in the name of protecting himself from the one thing he feared the most, being hurt. Maximilian's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind him. He turned to see Isabella standing in the doorway, her wide eyes full of curiosity. "Daddy," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you okay?" Maximilian's heart softened at the sight of his daughter. She had always been the light in his life, the one person who had never demanded anything from him except love. And yet, even she had been caught in the chaos of his self-destructive decisions. He smiled at her, though it felt forced. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just thinking." She walked over to him, her small hand reaching up to take his. "I don't like it when you're sad, Daddy." Maximilian's chest tightened. "I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry. I don't want to be sad either." Isabella looked up at him with those innocent eyes, as though she could see through him, see past the walls he'd built. "Will you stop being sad, Daddy? Will you make it better?" Her words hit him harder than anything Charlotte had said. For the first time, Max realized that his actions weren't just affecting him, they were affecting his daughter. She was too young to understand the complexities of his emotional turmoil, but she felt it. And if he didn't make things right, she would continue to feel the weight of his mistakes. He knelt to her level, pulling her into his arms. "I promise, Isabella, I'll make it better. I'll fix everything." Her arms tightened around his neck. "You don't have to fix it, Daddy. Just be happy." Maximilian closed his eyes, the tears threatening to spill over. He hadn't realized how much he had taken for granted. The love, the trust, everything he had been searching for was right in front of him. And yet, he had been blind to it, too consumed by his own fear and pride to see what truly mattered. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway, and Max pulled away from Isabella gently. He wiped his eyes, taking a deep breath as he stood to face the doorway. It was Mira, of course. He hadn't expected her to stay away for long, but now he was ready to face the woman who had once been his rock, the one who had shattered his trust so completely. She stepped into the room, her face neutral, but her eyes filled with something Max couldn't quite place. "Max," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. "Can we talk?" Maximilian nodded, gesturing toward the couch. Isabella had already run off to her room, leaving them alone in the silence. The space between them felt like an ocean, the distance too vast to bridge in a single conversation. Mira sat down, her hands folded neatly in her lap. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air was thick with unspoken words, with all the things they both needed to say but didn't know how to begin. Finally, Mira broke the silence. "I'm sorry, Max, for everything, for the lies, for the manipulation, for everything." Maximilian looked at her, his eyes searching her face, trying to gauge her sincerity. "Why, Mira? Why did you do it? Why did you have to go this far?" She took a deep breath, her gaze dropping to her hands. "I didn't know what else to do. I watched you push everyone away, including me. I thought that if I forced you to see the truth, maybe you'd realize how much you were losing, how much you were pushing away." Maximilian's chest tightened as he listened to her words. "But you were manipulating me. You were playing a game, Mira." Mira's eyes met his, and there was something raw in them, something he hadn't seen before. "I was trying to make you see. I thought that if I pushed hard enough, if I made you confront the truth, you'd finally understand what was important. But I see now that I was wrong. I pushed too hard. I hurt you, and for that, I'm truly sorry." Maximilian felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Part of him wanted to scream at her, to demand why she had betrayed his trust so completely, but another part of him, the part that still remembered the woman who had been there for him when no one else was, wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that she was still the person he had once trusted. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said quietly, the words feeling like a weight in his chest. "You broke me, Mira. You made me question everything. You made me push away the one person I knew would always be there for me. Mira's expression softened, her eyes welling with tears. I know, Max. I know. And I can't undo what I've done. But I want you to know. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to be the reason you lost yourself. He stared at her for a long moment, his mind swirling with doubt and confusion. Could he ever trust her again? Could he rebuild what they had? Or had she done too much damage? Maximilian stood up, pacing slowly as he collected his thoughts. The truth was, he didn't have the answers. He didn't know if he could forgive her or if he even wanted to. But one thing was clear. He had to face his own mistakes first. He couldn't keep hiding behind his wealth, his tests, his emotional walls. I have to do this on my own, he said finally, his voice low but firm. I have to learn to trust again. I have to stop running from what I'm afraid of. Mira didn't speak at first, but after a long silence, she nodded. I understand. But just know, Max, that I'm still here, and I always will be. If you want to rebuild, I'll be here. Maximilian looked at her one last time, the weight of the decision settling in his chest. I don't know what's next for us, Mira, but I know I need time. Time to figure out who I am, who I want to be. Mira stood up, her expression soft but resigned. Take all the time you need. But remember, you're not alone in this. Maximilian watched her leave the room, his mind still a whirlwind of emotions. He didn't know if he could rebuild with Mira or if he would ever be able to trust her again. But what he did know was that he had to start somewhere. He had to stop testing people, stop pushing them away. If he wanted to find love, he had to be willing to give it. Feeling the emotional weight of Max's journey? If you've been hooked on this roller coaster of emotions, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment below and let us know. Can Max ever rebuild his life, or has too much been broken? Like this video for more emotional twists, and stay tuned for part 2 of Max's redemption.